Good afternoon and welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming and thank you for making the time. And I'm so very grateful that you could come and come here for today. So today, Nicoletta and myself, we will be moderating together. And please remember your questions, audience. Some of the people will have to leave immediately after, but we will inform you which speaker leaves after. So you can ask the question if you have any questions, including the panel. If you have any questions for the speaker, you can ask instantaneously. But the rest of even those who are online, will be staying here the whole time. A short introduction of ourselves. For those who do not know SIA, that's the Swiss Impact Investment Association. So we are based out of Zug, but we exist and we are operational all over Switzerland. We are a globally known brand. And when we participate and organize an event, people like our esteemed audience comes from all over the world to participate. And celebrities, world leaders, political leaders, all. We are also the largest group of impact investors in Europe, and we are also expanding fast into Far East and Middle East. In Switzerland, we are the oldest and the largest impact investment association and the group. And our members are not only financial institutions, but they are also academics, private investors, multinationals, and all that. And some of our board members and partners are also present today. I see one of them, Johan. So anybody of you who is interested to know about infrastructures in Africa, please contact Johan. Then we have Patrick and Michelle. So if anybody wants to learn about green bonds, and especially how they are using green bonds to protect the rainforests in Latin America, please talk to them. And if you want to know more about branding, and if you're seeking resources for your business or project, please contact Sveta. What do we do? In case if you want to know about SIA, so we have our monthly newsletters where we summarize not only the news, but impactful businesses and investments all around the world. Our partner companies, we subsidize and certify and brand company businesses all around the world on UN SDGs. We support our members with finding resources, and if be possible, we take your points, issues that you have collected, and take it to the relevant authorities. And our members are always kept informed about every event and everything that we participate or organize in. And any of you, if you want to be member of SIA, please feel free to give leave your contact details at the door, or I think you can leave it with one of our colleagues. So today's topic is mainstreaming impact investment in the pension fund industry, and why regulation plays a very, very important role. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, we have a completely wrong audience for this, or the wrong participants and speakers for this, because these people are really seriously working about it. They are working on implementing impact investment in their own institutions and companies. And we can learn a lot from them, and I hope many of you will. And I know that a lot of financial institutions today are not really fulfilling the rules or following the conditions as it is laid down. And to make it more interesting, the comment, even if you listen to the Antonio Guterres of the UN, he said there is a massive overhaul of the financial industry necessary. So today our goal is to try to see that this doesn't come to that far, and people can learn from what our speakers are doing. So before the start of the program, I have been asked to say few words about it. So if I may comment on it, my title today will be Enough is Enough. I'm very tired. I have been talking about this topic more than 20 years, about these details, debates, discussions, and they have unfortunately led to nowhere. I'm not talking about economic strategies, models and achievements. I'm talking about investment strategies, investments. And I will give you a few examples to show why I think that, and why I am hoping that our audience, our esteemed speakers can tell us how to overcome this problem. Number one, we are all aware of climate change. I don't want to introduce each of the speakers because they have such an amazing CVs, so I would just leave it on the screen so you guys can see what each of them is, or who each of them is. We are talking about climate change, and we are all talking about the impact of fossil fuel on climate change. This chart came out from IMF. It's talking about 7 trillion in the fossil fuel subsidies, and out of which 1 trillion comes from major banks, and these are hidden subsidies in bonds. Consequences, as per Bloomberg, more than 5 million people are dying caused by climate change per year, and this is just one of the consequences, not all. Second, we are all talking about loss of biodiversity, and we are all speaking, talking, debating, discussing about the deforestation in the Amazon, which, coincidentally, has 30% of the world's biodiversity. Now, some of the statistics prove that we are destroying the Amazon 1.5 million hectares per year, which is around 150 acres per minute, or 113 football fields per minute. We also know that 80% of the deforestation of the Amazon is happening because of cattle ranching. And guess what? 2 years ago, there came a news in our newspapers, in the Dutch newspapers, that Dutch pension funds are one of the largest investors in companies like JBS, Marfrig, Minerga, which are directly responsible for this mass-scale deforestation. Now I come to something which is much more closer to my heart at this moment. We all know how many financial institutions and pension funds are following investment strategies with devastating impacts. Last few years, our major financial institutions have been investing into a country led by a dictator which has caused the complete destruction of a nation called Artsakh. Many of you may be aware of, or many of you may not be. They starved 120,000 children, 120,000 adults and 30,000 children the last 9 months, with no water, no food, no energy. And since the last 1 week, they bombed them and they chased them out. To the numbers I have from ICRC, I think more than 90% people have fled. There's nothing left. And we are absolutely silent and doing nothing. So I just want to quote Martin Luther King when he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And we are caught in an inexplicable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So with this, I want to invite our next speaker, Ruben Vardian, who I know personally for more than 2 decades, and his nation is facing the consequences of our activities and our strategies. You can read. He's a philanthrope, and he's world known for this, and he has done a lot. You can Google him, you can find everything about him. Unfortunately, he cannot come here today. Why? Because he has been taken 3 days ago. We don't know where he is, we don't know what condition he is in. He's somewhere being tortured, and most probably we really don't know what is going to happen to him. And believe me, we are in contact with all the major institutions, including ICRC. So he will be replaced by Sheila Palin. So she is a world-famous human rights speaker and a lawyer, and she can give the next 2-3 minutes a short background or story about what is going on there. So Sheila, the stage is yours now. Sheila, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having me and for paying attention to this crisis. Indeed, on 19 September, so that's just almost 2 weeks ago, Azerbaijan launched an extensive military assault on a little enclave self-governing called Artsakh, or Nagorno-Karabakh as it's more commonly known, under the guise of an anti-terrorist operation, which resulted in the killings of several hundred people. Baku's aim was to force a new status quo in this region on its own terms and with no regard for the lives or basic human rights of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh. This attack came after Azerbaijan had kept Nagorno-Karabakh under blockade or siege for 9 months, slowly starving its population of 120,000 Armenians. And the act has been described as genocide by the former prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. After 24 hours of heavy bombardment, the Nagorno-Karabakh authorities surrendered, and thousands of ethnic Armenians began to flee into neighboring Armenia. And by the end of last week, more than 100,000 ethnic Armenians are now in Armenia. They were on the other side of the border for thousands of years before that. So their bodies were noticeably withered from having been slowly starved, and the UN recently went in there and found that there are maybe 50 to maximum 1,000 Armenians left. So the rest, many of them have been arrested, including Nagorno-Karabakh's former state minister and renowned humanitarian philanthropist, Ruben Vardanyan. Azerbaijan has a horrific track record of torturing and mistreating, even killing Armenians that fall into their hands. They literally hate Armenians. Those who are arrested, there are more, they're all very much in danger, and they will be put through shambolic trials. The mass displacement of nearly the entire Armenian population was based on this, that they could never safely live under Azerbaijani rule. Azerbaijan is now, of course, saying that, no, these Armenians had nothing to fear. They should have stayed. They left voluntarily. Nothing could be further from the truth, and nothing that Azerbaijan says can be trusted. They have broken every promise, and they will continue to do so. Now, Azerbaijan has its sights set on Armenia, and it is losing credibility. It has lost so much credibility and reliability in the eyes of the international community. The risks that the Azerbaijani regime will be sanctioned is higher than ever now. Armenia has also just today voted to join the International Criminal Court, which makes criminal accountability for war crimes now even a real possibility. The Azerbaijani public is beginning to see that their leadership is corrupt, that it's violent, and so the regime will need more war with Armenia to keep its people's eyes off of its own wrongdoings. My apologies. So there will come a point where the Azerbaijani house of cards will fall, but the longer it takes, the more innocent people will die for nothing. And the only way to stop people like President Aliyev is to hit them where it hurts the most, and that's economically. Don't do business with them, impose sanctions, don't invest in Azerbaijan, don't trade with Azerbaijan. Don't do it if you have any sense of fairness, goodness, justice, or morality. Instead, do business with Armenia, invest in Armenia, trade with Armenia. This newly displaced mass population is not one that should be looked at only from the lens of a refugee. They have been welcomed to a new home, they have been embraced, and every effort is being made to ensure that they will not be a burden on the economy of Armenia, but rather that they'll become productive assets and contributors to that system. But for this, we need help. I mean, they need help. So for the impact investors in the room, Armenia is proving itself and has proven itself, demonstrates to be a partner and conducive environment for investors looking to finance and enable long-term sustainable investments, whether it's in socioeconomic development, in sectors like education, health, culture, hospitality. Soon we will be learning from these people, from these more than 100,000 people who've been displaced, what the talent is and what is the innovative entrepreneurial ideas that they will have to begin to rebuild their lives with the most autonomy and self-determination possible. Thank you very much for having me here today. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Sheila. Sheila is one of the speakers who has to leave very fast. So if anybody has any questions, please come forward and you can ask it now. Sheila, before anybody asks a question, I am aware that EU Commission is considering sanctions. Also, ICRC and other organizations, even UN visited Artsakh yesterday, I think. What can the pension funds or the financial institutions, in your opinion, do something about this?
I mean, I can't have a specific answer with respect to the pension funds per se, other than I think it's going to be a creative effort to try to find a way to hurt, like I said, Azerbaijan economically, so it doesn't have this added incentive to, or emboldened sense that it can get away with what it's doing, and in any way, shape, or form to support Armenia and these newly displaced people in whatever creative way that the fund can come up with, even if it's just through donations. I don't know if you can do that, but we're looking at reform here, and we're looking at trying to. We have to build the nation as well, because it's been very broken from a lot of aggression in the last couple of years. So, you know, your ideas are what we're looking for. I think that's the best answer I can give at the moment.
Thank you, Sheila. Anybody has any questions? There's somebody in the back with a question. Can she get a microphone?
Thank you very much, Ben and Sheila, for shedding light on what is underway today in Artsakh and Armenia. Just more a comment than a question. There is social entrepreneurship infrastructure built in Armenia. There's an impact hub in Yerevan. There was an impact hub variant in Artsakh, and there are other centers where the entrepreneurial spirit of the youth is being captured and profiled. I would encourage impact investors, venture philanthropists, and those who are moved by the current situation, and notably the situation that Ruben Vardanyan finds himself in today, which is absolutely dire, to look at the existing organizations, the networks on the ground. There's so many of us in this room and beyond, in Geneva, who can help point in the right direction. So I just wanted to add that comment with my deep gratitude to Sheila and Ben.
Thank you. So with this, I hand it over to Nicoletta, who will now take over the rest of the program. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Nicoletta Catrini, and I'm the Head of Research and Development at the Swiss Impact Investing Association. And I will help you to follow this panel. The idea is to offer you a broader perspective on impact investing. You had enough figures, but do you know how much impact investing is making up of the total assets under management and investment? Just 2%. And how much of this 2% are pension funds? Globally, just 2%. Yet, we are hungry for impact investing. So there is a huge gap. We need to explain why. So with our first speaker, Madam Cathy Wood, the CEO and founder of ARK Invest from USA, more than $25 billion assets under management, she will highlight with Stuart Forbes from London why there is an untapped potential of impact investing in the pension funds market. So the idea is to open the problem of the untapped potential. Then we will follow with a panel and speakers from the faiths. Because do you know, faiths have practiced impact investing with pension funds before impact investing even existed. And we will have among us Father Seamus Finn from Washington, D.C. She He is actually the global leader in impact investing using pension funds from the Catholic Church in the United States. He has more than 50 years of experience. So he will share the experience that faiths have already in how to make impact investing with pension funds. In the same panel, we will have representatives from Aliter Invest, Archduke Imre Habsburg Lorraine, and Mr. Eric Begel from Aliter Invest, who are those who today do this impact investing, align with faith values, and using pension funds. Also, a share experience of successful stories, what's working, and how they overcame barriers. And in the third wave, we'll have a rich panel of experts from pension funds from Geneva, from Denmark, from European Investment Bank, who will highlight what would be the needs in terms of regulations. So we make these pension funds more likely to enter the market of impact investing. So this is it. Thank you so much. Do not hesitate to ask questions. I hope the logic, you liked it, because we start with the future, we go to the past, and we end with the present challenges and solutions. So we thank you in advance for your contributions to all speakers. Please, the video with Madam Cathy Wood. Madam Cathy Wood couldn't be today here, so we recorded a video. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, to Building Bridges 2023 at the panel of the Swiss Impact Investing Association on mainstreaming impact investing into pension funds industry. We have the honor to have as guest Madam Catherine Wood, the global leader in investing in disruptive technologies. She founded the very first ETF in disruptive technology already in 2014. And we have among us also Stuart Forbes, who is the co-founder of RISE, the main issuers of thematic ETFs in Europe. So thank you for being with us today. So with you, we would like to explore the untapped potential of disruptive technology in impact investing market. In other words, please let us know, can we talk about a market in impact investing without investing in disruptive technology? And mainly talk us also about your recent acquisition of RISE in Europe. We are thrilled to hear about it.
Okay, Nicoletta, thank you very much for inviting both Stuart and me to this august organization and conference. Yes, we'll consider the source, but I think that innovation solves problems, and disruptive innovation that transforms the world solves even more problems. And critically, sustainability is a big part of the issues that we are facing around the world. So our focus on 5 major innovation platforms, so robotics, energy storage, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and multi-omic sequencing. We think these 5 platforms are going to transform the world, and for good. And not only that, they are going to create not just exponential growth opportunities, but super exponential growth opportunities as they converge. And probably the best example there is autonomous mobility. So the autonomous mobility theme involves 3 of the platforms. Robots, electric vehicles, drones are robots. Energy storage, they will be electric. And artificial intelligence, they'll be powered by AI. And we think the wealth creation and improvement to society, access to transportation and to the delivery of goods is going to expand enormously. Again, all for the good of the world. Why RISE? Well, we at ARC have had the luxury of reaching many European many Europeans during the past 10 years. In fact, 25% of our subscriber base, we give our research away, but 25% of those interested in it are from Europe. And the number one question we have received over the years is, why can't we access your strategies in Europe? And the answer was, we didn't have a UCITS ETF. We were looking for a European partner for years. And finally, thanks to Tom Stout, we found this little gem called RISE, R-I-Z-E, inside Artsakh. And when we met them, we thought, wow, here is a firm that really cares about the companies and stocks in its portfolio. And it's accountable for their sustainability strategies, and it's accountable when things go wrong. And we thought, wow, this is so different from the ETF world, in the US at least, where most managers of ETFs care about their tracking error, but really don't know that much about the companies and stocks in their portfolio. The other thing is, RISE gives its research away as well. It's extremely transparent. And I've always said, whether it's ESG or sustainability, ARC's disruptive innovation strategies are intrinsically
Exactly.
ESG and so forth. So I'd love to have Stuart talk a little bit about the journey to Article 9. And we actually found out about Article 9 through Japan, our partner. It's becoming very important to them as well. And the biggest surprise to me was, here, RISE, more than half of its portfolios are Article 9. Even after the great cleansing last year, they did not have to change the designation of any of their funds. So perhaps, Stuart, you might like to talk about that a bit. You're on mute, Stuart.
Yeah, so thanks for that intro there, Kathy. But yeah, I think the Article 9 space in Europe has been an area of focus for us as a firm. It's an area where we've obviously differentiated ourselves and spend a lot of time in Europe, not just talking about our own products and strategies, but also helping clients build their own Article 9 and Article 8 offerings, actually. So we've been sort of acting as a kind of consulting service for a lot of large private banks and clients across Europe, so and even in the Middle East as well. So it's been a really interesting journey. We actually predicted that huge, I would say, recategorization was going to happen a year before it did, because effectively, if you're licensing a third party's index for an Article 9 strategy, you have no input or control. You're just effectively a white label for someone else's IP and company selection process. So for us, what we could see there was it's going to be extremely difficult for people to actually comply with the SFDR sort of obligations, which are binding on the manager, not on the index provider that you might be licensing your index from. So, there's three sort of, critical components of a sustainable investment. One is it contributing to an environmental or social objective? Well, many people hadn't even defined how they calculate or determine that. They were just sort of investing in a thematic opportunity like clean energy without any sort of framework for assessing the impact of that, or even assessing the sustainable thematic purity of that. So that was the first thing. But actually the two most problematic aspects of that were the second and third mandatory limbs of sustainable investment, which is do no significant harm and good governance. So if you're licensing somebody else's index, what happens if you discover that there is a company that might on the face of it look like it's aligned with your environmental or social objective, but actually is harming other objectives? For example, if you're investing in a company that is producing solar panels, but then you discover that company is actually employing forced labor in a particular country. Now, this is a real example. There was a company where this actually happened. and loads of Article 9 funds continued to hold this company. You have to eject that. You have to do something about it. You have to ensure that you have a mechanism to do that. And then finally, you've got to be investing in companies that are well governed. And again, without some kind of process enables you to ultimately, have companies coming in and coming out depending on, obviously in an objective way as far as possible and under some sort of framework. Then you can't really comply, and that's why there was such a huge amount of downgrades, all blamed on the European Commission, of course, by all of these asset managers, which I don't think they should be allowed to get away with that. I think there needs to be some sort of reckoning there, because what happened was you had all these asset managers hoovering up billions and billions in assets across Article 8 and particularly Article 9. And then right at the last second, when that final deadline in December 2020 came in, they all recategorized their funds. So, and then they blamed the European Commission for a haphazard approach to rolling out the regulation. And whilst I have some sympathy for, the sort of back to front nature and the way that things have, SFDR has been rolled out versus company specific regulation like CSRD, what I don't have sympathy with is the lack of, it's either a lack of planning, regulatory planning, or it's just a gamble. It's like, look, we'll figure it out later. Let's just hoover up the assets now and downgrade at the last minute, which is exactly what happened. So we obviously avoided that. We build everything from scratch. It takes months. It can take us a year or more to build any one of our sustainable rules-based strategies. And obviously now with the acquisition, the opportunity to continue building and take what we're doing in conjunction with the wider global ARC team. Obviously, this is a global opportunity, and this is going to give us that now springboard
Thank you so
to take
much.
what we're doing in
We
Europe
will need to
and take it to more
and here
markets.
you will find a full video on the website of for timing purposes. We need to keep the timing. You will find a full video on the website of the Swiss Impact Investing Association, and I really encourage you because we already saw big problems related to measurement, disclosure, and categorizations. And this is exactly where regulations enter and can bring some light about how we can have more clarification about that and not have the same situations like Stuart was just speaking about. So now we invite Father Seamus Finn, because if we talk about impact investing with pension funds, we really need to hear from churches. Father Seamus Finn, welcome. Thank you so much for being among us from Washington, D.C.
Very good.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone, and good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me, and great to be with you. I'm presuming you can hear me okay. Just a few brief comments about our experience. I mean, in terms of, I'm part of a missionary congregation that's been around for a few hundred years. We've in about 48 countries around the world. And joining with our other colleagues in the religious community, mostly the Catholic, but also the ecumenical and broader faith communities, we started out going down this road in something that was called microfinance in the 60s and the 70s. Contrary to what Nicoletta said, I haven't been doing this for 50 years, but pretty close. Anyway, microfinance was built on the principle that our folks working on the ground level felt that they could lend something like $50 to a woman in Cochabamba or in Oruro in Bolivia or in Venezuela. And she, in her entrepreneurial, innovative ways, would be able to make that $50, first of all, finance her own projects, and indeed continue to grow and increase her business by engaging her neighbors, members of family, or friends. And so the microfinance business took off very well. We were later in the 80s and the 90s, saw a number of the larger European and US banks wanting to take over some of these microfinance institutions because they saw an opportunity. They saw an opportunity to grow their business and to expand. Secondly, I think from our engagement with corporations over 50 years through the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility in New York, we have recognized our responsibility as shareholders to be active owners of those shares. And so we have taken up every opportunity to engage the management, engage the board of directors of those companies that we invest in, either by filing stockholder resolutions, which was our bread and butter approach, to actually engaging in proposing some solutions to some of the issues that we were learning about. To today, we have many roundtables with these businesses and many discussions around pressing social issues in different parts of the world. The third thing I want to emphasize is that nobody likes to be always a downer on issues and to be seen as somebody who's criticizing what's going on in the world. So around the year 2000, we especially became interested in saying, how can we deploy our capital and encourage others to deploy their capital to make a positive contribution to development in different corners of the world? And grateful to a number of different innovations, most especially things like the internet and communication and technology, we were able then to identify projects, identify funds, and identify sectors where we could deploy our capital and support the efforts of individuals and communities. And we have done it two ways. Sometimes we will do it in what we call a concessional investment. So where we are willing because we believe in the community, what they're trying to do, and in the people who are running it, so that we may invest and be happy to just simply get our capital back after 5 or 10 years, or indeed accept a return of 1 or 2%. That's a small piece of what we've been doing. Secondly, on the impact investing side, we have identified a number of funds in different regions of the world, actually across all continents, that have been developed by others that we have found to be trustworthy, whether it's in the area of agriculture, whether it's in the area of education, or in the area of medical care and things like that, that we can feel like we can deploy some of our capital that performs on an equal level with the other equity portfolio positions that we may hold. And so we're extremely happy that that has come along, and we've been joined by many other religious institutions and religious communities, and been able to, I think, invite others who have been hesitant about dipping their toe in the water on impact investing, whether it's pension funds, foundations, philanthropies, et cetera. And we look forward to continue to be a very important part of encouraging that to continue to grow.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Father Seamus. So I hope this really opened to you the horizon on what can be done in impact investing with pension funds. And let's not forget the faiths to look upon their experience. We have a lot to learn. And now I invite Archduke Imre of Augsburg and Lorraine to talk with Eric Begel from Aliter Invest to share their experience and doing the same things, faith-based impact investing in their firm here based in Geneva. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Nicoletta. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here with my colleague who is on site, Eric Behagel. And thank you, Father, for this wonderful introduction, because you said a lot of so important things. I'm very happy to be part of this adventure within our company to focus on ethical investments. I joined the family company in 2016 that my father started, and which is a multifamily office. And our clients said, we're fine with the financial aspect of our investments, but can we not do something more about the ethical part? Can we not invest also more in alignment with our convictions? And we happen to have quite a few congregation, financial, religious institutions, and private families. And so we started to do an audit on the market, and of course we saw that there was a lot of ESG possibilities, ESG investment solutions, and the conclusion, to make it short, because I know that time is constrained, but the conclusion was that it's a step in the good direction, but we can do more. We can do more, especially as Christians and for Christian investors who not only have the E, the S, and the G, so the environment, the social, and the good governance aspect, but are judging conviction out of what we call the social doctrine of the church, which is a wonderful richness that the church offers to every person of goodwill, as the church says. And we thought, why don't we look a little bit at those principles and try to apply them to financial investments. So this is what we did, and we started investment solutions on the quoted market and unquoted market. And basically, of course, there's a part that we can exclude, what we don't want, but that's in a way the easy part. It could be, for example, controversial weapons. It could be the sectors of addiction. And of course, everything that's linked to bioethics and the dignity of the human person. This is already something that you don't see in the purely ESG solutions. So everything that's linked to protection of life, for instance, and that was very important for our clients. But then another dimension is what do we want to include? And we saw that on the market there is a tendency to look at the best-in-class approach. And we thought, okay, again, it's a good intention, but very often it favors the big fishes on the market. And why don't we look at how companies can increase and ameliorate over time in the sector of environment, in the sector of social, and the good governance. So to apply a best in effort approach. This was important to us. And then, of course, the engagement that Father Finn mentioned. We found it very difficult to apply this dimension because there's so many companies in the world, and it's difficult to follow them all and to get in touch with them. So of course there's proxy voting, but that's limited. And we try, especially my colleague Eric, to contact the people we have in portfolios, the companies we have in portfolios, and try to have a dialogue with them and tell them a little bit about the principles we represent through our investors, and to see if they can be sensitive to this. And we had some positive surprises sometimes, even from bigger groups. And then maybe the last dimension is the impact. Of course, in the quoted market, it's difficult to claim to have a real impact. Of course, you can do this engagement that we talked about, but we thought if we cannot have an impact as we would do on the private equity market or the private debt market, then we might as well share part of the returns and revenues of the investment solutions of the fund. And so we decided to allocate part of the revenue to some initiatives and associations that were in line with those values, including poverty, education, and also linked to what we call integral ecology. That is, of course, the environment, but to put the human person really in the center again. So it's been a wonderful adventure, and it's work in progress because we saw that to be ethical in the world of finance it's very difficult to be perfect. It's constantly a learning curve. So we are still learning, trying to find the right tools. We developed the best we could, some methodology internally. But again, to your question, Nicoletta, what is possible is that at least it showed us that there is a demand for faith-based investment in the United States, but of course in Europe. And it seems that Europe is more and more discovering this. and that's very reassuring, and that's a very positive news, especially because if we talk about the ethical dimension, then we also have to talk about the return. And very often, or at least in the past, my father told me that if you would invest in an ethical way, let's say in companies with a high level of ethics, it meant basically less return. And today we see that it's not anymore the case. So that's very, very reassuring too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Now, Mr. Eric Begler, please.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Thank you, SIIA. So Imre and I work in tandem. He is the source of inspiration. He inspires. And I execute. In other words, I do the boring part. My challenge today is to make it palatable for you. And to do that, I'll be extremely short because what I had planned to say is very consistent with both what Father Seamus Finn and Imre just said. So it's going to be very short. Basically, how do we integrate this inspiration that Imre just described into our investment portfolios? We do it from two directions. One is technical. We use data sets as ESG investors do, but we use it quite a bit differently. We weigh the factors according to the priorities of the teachings of the Church. And to make it short, I'll just tell you that in ESG, the S component is a bigger factor for us. We will tend to overweigh the factor of low turnover, low staff turnover in a company. We will tend to overweight companies that have good respect for the local labor laws in the countries in which they operate. So in short, we just make sure that the factors that go into the grades of the companies that we analyze, the factors that are most consistent with our values, are weighed according to the importance of those factors in the values that we defend. And the second, so that was the technical part of what we do, and then the second part is more inspirational, and this is entirely consistent with what Father Seamus Finn was saying about engagement. What we are seeing is we're seeing companies that have very, very good grades from an ESG perspective, and that are just doing things in a non-ethical way. And I just quote one very short example, which is a very well-known French healthcare company, which offers clinical care services. And we had a conversation with the CEO, who was certainly a very good person, and the company was very well ranked. But listening to the CEO, he was more of a financial controller than someone who was trying to inspire the idea that they were trying to make the world a better place and to basically help the people they were helping in their nursing homes. There was no humanity in the way this company was being managed. Year to date, this company is down 75%, and that goes to say that there is more to ESG than pure ESG. There is ESG, which we call with a soul, and that's what we're trying to implement in our portfolios.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. So what we heard here, two, three words, the engagement and the change in the weighting in the equation of impact investing, human side has more weight than the others, without, of course, neglecting the return. I think this is something also from a future thinking point of view, because we talk, and last year I do remember here at Building Bridges, one of the main topic was measurement. How do we measure impact? How do we measure the E? It's a little bit more easier because it's climate, but in terms of social and governance, it becomes very difficult. And we heard from all speakers that there is a real problem. And we hope now with the next wave of speakers to have more clarity and light about how do you see this going on, what were your own experience in pension fund looking for impact investing, and in terms of regulation, where we should work on the calibration of this regulation to make this field expanding. Thank you so much. Please, Van.
Thank you very much. So we start with the president of Mauritius, because she's quite Yeah, she's also Professor Dr. Amina Gharib Fakim. Amina, the stage is yours now.
Thank you, Ben. I would like again to thank you for associating me with this very important discussion. And I understand that I'm to speak on the regulatory environment that will allow such initiative. But before speaking on this, let me first go back to why countries, especially those in Africa and the global south, could benefit from impact investment, and why it may be important to go down that route in order to help them grow in an era of a changing climate. Let me begin with Africa and why we need all the financial resources that can be made available for her to grow. Africa has contributed around 3% of greenhouse gas emission and yet is bearing the brunt of a changing climate. How to fix it, or rather how to live with it and adapt, means access to finance at scale. Africa is home to 1.4 billion people with a median age of 16 and heading to 2 billion by 2050. Yet, in her 60-plus years of post-independent history, the continent continues to suffer from stalling multilateral trade negotiations, and the death of the Doha Round has given rise to unprecedented forms of protectionism, unilateralism, a lack of political leadership to embrace and nurture multilateralism. Unfair competition, unilateral partition of Africa into Economic Partnership Agreement, EPAs, and skewed intellectual property rights have resulted in an international trade system that disproportionately favors wealthy economies. The emerging trade climate change measures will only further restrict Africa's participation in global trade markets. So to tackle the looming climate crisis, the following question, the question is as follows. Should Africa still depend on the generosity of the global north? Their inability to meet the 100 billion pledge revealed their moral reluctance to acknowledge developed countries' contribution to climate change. Yet, to transition to a greener future, Africa must access affordable public and private funding coupled with debt relief. Ladies and gentlemen, these shifts are central to building capacity for sustained transformative growth and resilience in the face of climate challenges. Developed countries have resisted fundamental reforms to support the developing world with climate emergency. Innovative global development finance ecosystems are needed to unlock equitable international financing flows while preserving the fiscal sovereignty of developing countries to pursue development pathways unique to their circumstances and realities. Africa's position is constrained by a lack of affordable, reliable, and sufficient finance, juxtaposed with a debt crisis compounded by climate challenges. At the level of the multilateral institutions as the IMF, the issuance and recycling of the SDRs, the special drawing rights, a means for enhancing available climate financing, is drawing global attention. IMF rechanneling of the idle SDRs should be used to help developing countries with much needed finance, fiscal sovereignty of African economies, but being the fact that the SDRs are weighted to the amount going to African and other poorer countries remain tiny. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a globally recognized need to shift, unlock, scale, and mobilize new forms of fit-for-purpose finance to deliver on climate agreements and sustainable development goals. The priority of priorities for African and, of course, global South countries is to have affordable, predictable, accessible finance at scale. This is where impact investing can help. Impact investing is gaining momentum, and yet globally, it remains subdued. And only 2% of the total global impact investment come from pension funds, and yet the market of impact investing is on the rise as people realize its potential to target social issues and environmental challenges. There are a few reasons leading to this situation: limited information, lack of standardization in the measurement of the impact, and mainly fiduciary duty and risk management, as pension funds are traditionally risk averse. But as pension funds and sovereign wealth funds have long-term obligations and investment horizons, this put them into a unique position to contribute to the SDGs and take action on sustainability risk, especially climate change. More than half of the world's 100 largest public pension and sovereign wealth funds account for 22 trillion US dollars in assets under management and have long-term obligation and investment horizon. Yet, more than half of the world's 100 largest public pension and sovereign wealth funds do not disclose or report on sustainability issues, and institutional investors and as a group, they can do more to mainstream sustainability. Yet, limited number of funds publish meaningful reporting on their sustainability performance and ESG integration strategies. Sovereign wealth funds are also relatively less transparent than pension funds. Many reporting funds acknowledge the material risk posed by ESG issues and associated regulatory measures, with the majority of these funds changing their investment strategies and policies accordingly. Reporting funds are increasingly sensitive to climate-related risk, with more than 4 out of 5 funds having designed a climate or carbon dioxide reduction strategy, and the same number reporting the use of an international reporting framework on sustainability. Reporting funds are also defining climate-related targets for their investment decisions and sustainability integration strategies, with more than 2/3 of front-runner funds using a specific climate target, such as net zero. However, only 20% of funds are using audited or certification processes to evaluate their sustainability reporting and ESG integration. Yet, funds have identified pools of good practices for sustainability integration in strategic areas like governance, corporate sustainable investment policies, sustainability integration strategies, ESG integration along the investment chain, climate action, and evaluation reporting. There is a clear recognition that institutional investors with a long-term investment horizon, such as pension and sovereign wealth fund, need to pivot rapidly to a more sustainable investment portfolio. Such reorientation can mitigate a range of sustainability-related risks and help contribute to sustainable financing through, for example, investment in renewable energy or clean technology. While there is much good practice to be applauded and shared, there's also room for improvement, especially on disclosure and reporting, where there is great variance among reporting funds in terms of what and how to report. Meanwhile, the use of key performance indicators is lagging, making sustainability disclosure highly subjective in some cases. What is needed is greater harmonization of standards and regulations to promote more widespread action on sustainability integration and performance. Institutional investors need to integrate development objectives, especially the SDGs, into their investment. This will bring more credibility to their claim to be sustainable investors while helping them to mitigate relevant risks. Ladies and gentlemen, the SDGs provide a useful framework for sustainability integration and broaden the sustainable investment agenda. Impact investing is set to have the famous triple bottom line, whereby the social or environmental impact and the financial return have equal importance and reinforce each other. Correlation between impact investing and financial performance have been tested, demonstrating synergies across risk, return, and impact metrics, but transparency must remain key to sustain trust and confidence. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Amina. Ladies and gentlemen, Amina will have to leave soon, so if you have any questions for her, please ask now. I just wanted to jump ahead before anybody asks. I was thinking of what Dr. Greg Hainan will say, because he's also talking from the point of view of regulations on pension funds and everything. What would be your advice to the pension funds? Because I think one of the issues that Africa has is the perception and the regulation, which is, I think, stopping a lot of pension funds in the Western world to invest in Africa. So what would be your advice to the pension funds?
Unfortunately, Africa is not on the radar of many countries, of the powers which are at right now. And I think this is where there is a mistake, because I will posit this, because 40 years ago, the world didn't see China coming, and China came 40 years later. I think we're in a similar position now. We are ignoring Africa, much to the disadvantage of the rest of the world, because they are not seeing the potential that Africa presents in terms of development. And if we were to invest in development, there are so many areas, so many avenues where the returns will be, but of course in the long term, not immediately in the short term. And I think of agriculture being one of them. I think of energy. I think of so many other important thematics, which of course will have a direct impact on the population of Africa and of course of the world. And yet it is not being seen from that perspective, because so far the rest of the world has seen Africa only through the humanitarian lens, which is of course completely wrong. So what we need to do is look at ways of comforting those with the sovereign fund, with those of course the pension fund, but put in the framework where there is transparency, because I think the world has experienced too many bad examples to just give away the pension fund, of course, the employees like this. So they need more transparency, more regulatory approach. At the same time, also, KPI, how are they going to monitor what's going on with the investment? So I think if we put all these in place, I don't see why this cannot be an avenue for Africa to actually access funds at scale, because right now it has been a trickle down and it is not working.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much. And with this, we will give, please, the word to speakers we have here, exactly who are heads of pension funds. Please.
Yeah, sorry. So I hear what you just said, but we need to walk before we run. And as you just said, allocations to impact investing is yet 2%, even less in Switzerland. Now, the whole constraint is to start a meaningful investment locally, to maybe have the experience, and then I think we'll get there. We'll get to Africa, we'll get to Asia, and so on. But we need to do this first step in locally. But then there are other constraints that we have to solve first, and regulation is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just a comment on the great speech from Mauritius. One of the things that I think pension funds could consider is to look at those strong institutions that we see, for instance, in Africa. I can mention, some of the regional development banks. IFO, our institution, the Danish DFI, we have invested equity in the TDB bank, which is a development bank. It's profitable. It's very well managed. It has, as B shareholders, also African pension funds. So I think that just to allocate a bit of time in assessing institutions like TDB, like AFC, and others in other parts of the world where you have strong performance and you have a strong ability to manage risk because of the governance structure of these institutions, and hence you also receive stable returns. So an institution like TDB has, for the last 10 years, had a stable return on equity of about 12% in US dollars, and has been paying dividends to the B shareholders, including us, but also, of course, the African pension funds. Just a practical suggestion.
Badiola?
Yes, no, and I was thinking another practical suggestion, because I think many pension funds, they have this barrier of information. There is this consortium of multilateral development banks. They have put together all the infrastructure deals for the last 15 years in a database called GEMS. And there you can see that these deals are really not failing. I mean, they are really profitable and with very, very few casualties. So more information is needed, and this is one example of what we can do to help this.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ogouche, please.
Thank you. Apologies, I couldn't be there with you in person. I would have loved to come to Geneva. But thank you for inviting me. I'm inspired by Imre Habsburger. I know they said he's the inspirer. I'm inspired by what he shared, and also by my father Finn. I'm actually inspired. I do, that speech, also coming from Africa, I share his sentiments 100%. And just seeing how, we need to get the taps open with Africa as opposed to the trickles. But I just want to introduce a different angle to this conversation, and that is on definition of impact. Right. And, from where I sit in Africa, if I'm investing a bond in a company that is hiring more people, that is giving power to people, that is creating jobs, in my view, that's impact. So it's not until I invest in a green bond that I term it as impact, because in Africa and Nigeria specifically, where I come from, you have an unemployment rate of about 40%. Youth unemployment rate even higher than that. And we've got the largest energy poverty in the world, where people don't have access to energy. So if a pension fund is investing in a power plant that is giving power to more people, that is giving jobs to more people, that is lifting people out of poverty, that is impact. And already we are doing that. So I guess definition is a bit narrow, where we think it's just a green bond or it's just climate finance and then it's impact. Then there's a lot of impact that pension funds are doing. I know we can do more. And that 2% is just, quite narrow in my view. The second thing I like to agree with a number of people on the panel is regarding information. One of the panelists, I can't remember who it was talking about information on, the companies they've invested in, especially the S, whereby they realize that those companies, when they invest in them, their returns are higher because they're focusing on, social good and things like that. So if pension funds are able to see this information and it's widespread, they will definitely act on it. Also, just perception of risk, is higher and might not necessarily be the case. Like what the previous speaker said, I think it was GEMS, whereby they've got a lot of information on infrastructure and to show that, those are not failing. So that's what I like to add to the conversation, in addition to just deal flow, right? So, pension funds will argue that there is a moral hazard in, I'm investing and I shouldn't be the one determining the transaction. So, they'll tell me most of the times that, bring the transactions on. So we are not seeing the deal flow of those transactions at scale, right? And I think that's one thing that we need to see how we can plug, especially with regards to project preparation, how we can prepare some of these projects, get them to a point where pension funds can invest in, risk mitigation tools where pension funds have more confidence because they know that there are backstops. So these are things, from my angle, I'd like to chip into discussion. A couple of other things, but I'll just pause here and, I'll share all the thoughts later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'd like now the panelists here to develop your expertise regarding to impact investing in the pension funds, and what do you see for the future as concrete levers we could act upon to go from 2% to more? Thank you.
Whoever, yes?
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Well, I come from the European Investment Bank, and maybe you know that the European Investment Bank is the bank of the European Union. It is in charge of putting or promoting or supporting the policy priorities of the European Commission, and it is owned by the member states. So from that perspective, we are a policy-driven bank, and saying this, we have been a purposeful investment partner from the very beginning, and if this can equate to impact, then we are an impact financier. I'm going to share with you a little bit the journey why the EIB shifted into becoming the European Climate Bank only recently in year 2020.
we have been for decades already working on climate, because already in 2007, when the Commission came forward with the 2020 package, we realized that the global warming was such a menace that whatever we do for the rest of developing or development priorities could be washed away by the impacts of climate change at any given moment. But not only for that, together with climate, you have a lot of co-benefits, be it pollution reduction, be biodiversity, be gender. So it is really a purpose that covers many other co-benefits. So when the Commission came forward in the year 2019 with the Green Deal, the bank or the governors, the member states, took the decision of transforming the bank into a climate bank. And this was done taking, well, 4 main commitments. The first commitment was to lend. So of all our activities, 50% would go into climate and environmental sustainability. Then the second one would be to mobilize 1 trillion of investments from 2020 to 2030. And then the third commitment was to align all activities with Paris. And I will get back to what we decided and tell you where we are today, and more than where we are today, where we are struggling today. So for the 50% target, of course, it is a very huge target. Every year, the bank lends more or less 70 billion euros. So this year, 2022, we lent 37 billion to climate action. And year after year, you really have to find these projects, and it's becoming very, very work intensive. And you must, or you will see that we had to train all our front office, and we had to engage with clients, trying to find out of their investment programs what is climate, what is not climate, and try to support them in their transition to low carbon activities. So that is already quite a significant change for us. Then for Paris alignment, which was the second one, we decided what type of activities we couldn't support anymore. And one of them, starting in year 2019, was to leave out support to any fossil fuels immediately. So that, for example, outside the Union was not understood at all. And even inside the Union, the European Union, not all the member states have the same level of cohesion and the same level of development. So it was not understood either. So we had to do a lot of work to engage with clients and explain why we were going into this low carbon framework. And still today, we need to work on this very, well, on a daily basis. And then the third point on mobilization, this is where the critical part is for the pension industry. The European Investment Bank, the mandate of the European Investment Bank is to be a crowding institution. So we very rarely go into a project financing the whole project. Maximum we can finance 100% with only few exceptions, like emergency recovery or this type of investments where we can go higher. So always we have to co-invest with third parties. We also do a lot of financial innovation, so to try to adjust the risk of the projects to the different risk-adjust returns of the different clients that we may have. For instance, in the year 2007, when the European Commission came with the 2020 package, the EIB was the first institution to ever launch or issue a green bond. So this is where our financial innovation comes forward. But the idea is that we are still very far from mobilizing what is needed. Nicoleta was explaining at the very beginning the huge gap that we have. Only in climate finance, we need to mobilize 3.5 trillion per year to meet the demand or the needs. And we are doing, what, 37 billion? So how many EIBs do we need? 100. So this is why we really need to mobilize pension funds. Nicoleta was also mentioning only 2% of the pension funds amount go into impact investment. Part of that would be climate investment. So for us, what I would say today here is I am supporter of having a target. Say, instead of 2%, put it at 5% or at 7%. For us, when we came with the target, we were, on one point, very challenged because we had to really reinvent the bank to become the climate bank, but also we were criticized because climate is not the only objective. You have also innovation objective, you have cohesion objective, poverty reduction, you have many other objectives that are very important. So I know it is not easy, but it is, a focus and a beacon, or I don't know how to say it, for setting the direction. I would very much suggest this target for pension industry.
Thank you, Esther. I was just going from this point to Greg. So Greg, like Esther mentioned, that EIB has a very clear vision, very clear directive on, for example, climate change. How do you look at it from the Swiss pension funds angle?
So I'd like to mention the outcome of COP26. COP26 was calling for redirecting flows into meaningful and scalable projects. Another outcome was to create public-private partnerships. And COP26 was calling for collective action. So that was our starting point. And we think the impact strategy should start with an engagement activity. So engage with policymakers, with corporates, but managers as well. So I'm a special advisor of the IIGCC, which is the largest activist group in Europe. And we've also engaged with auditors and with data providers, because we need quality data to take proper decisions. When it comes to funding the transition and climate change, we think we need a collective action, and we need to collaborate with governments. That's the concept that we want to put forward, because we want to think the whole cycle of the development of the solution, the production, the distribution, and the consumption. And we can only do that in a meaningful manner if we team up with the government and we syndicate investors. So one of the solutions, and why Africa is not yet a destination for flows, financial flows, is because we need first to syndicate investors and invest in a meaningful fashion.
And when you speak about syndicating, you're speaking only about pension funds in Switzerland, or also Denmark and other countries, and also institutions like EIB?
Well, we'll all need to find a collective solution. So we can do it locally, we can do it with also investors, but then we'll have to face regulation issues, we have to face fiscal issues. So these are a constraint that we'll have to solve before we can invest with international investors. The aim is to create a model that can be replicated elsewhere, but also, co-investing is the solution that we want to prioritize.
Thank you. And Motem, are you also considering thinking in the same line, or you guys are already doing it?
So at IFO, we are an impact investor. So when we look at an investment opportunity, we say it has to have impact. Then we look at the financial return. It also has to be a commercial investment. We are now raising a fund, we call it the SDG Equity Fund, trying to get Danish pension funds especially, but also other private investors on board. This is a fund that will invest in equity. We're seeking to raise about 700 million euros. It's going to be an Article 9 compliant fund. So we have over the years also worked hard to understand what is impact, how do we measure it, how do we document it. This fundraise that we're in the middle of now is based on the first SDG equity fund, which we have invested, where we also had about a little less than 700 billion, of which 60% came from Danish pension funds. So we were in a quite privileged situation that the Danish pension funds were entrusting a lot of capital for us, maybe not a lot of their capital, but for us it was a lot of capital, and it was said here, you have to start small, even though 700 million euros is also a significant amount of money. We've managed to invest all this, and now we have also managed to exit a few investments. We had an investment in energy, renewable energy, a distributed energy company working out of Nigeria, where we not only created a lot of impact in terms of climate and helped the company scale, but we're also able to exit to a private investor for even more scale of the impact. So the public-private partnership is important to create the regulatory environments that would allow, for instance, on-grid power purchasing agreements that would help de-risk the investments. But there are also investment opportunities that we are looking at, which can be done under the given regulatory environment. Because we have to do both. We have to look at the regulatory environment, both as they pertain to the pension funds, institutional investors in our own markets, because looking at the global risk, it may be that we are not calculating the systemic risk in the right way with the regulations we have nowadays, but also, of course, the regulations in the markets that we are operating in, just as we are doing in our own countries, constantly trying to reform and having public-private engagement to understand, where is the common ground. So it's a collective effort at the global level, at the country level, at the regional level, between DFIs and multilateral banks like EIB, who have an impact mandate and rely and have been entrusted with a lot of capital from the governments, from the citizens of the countries, with the pension funds, which are managing on behalf of their members a lot of funds. It has to be a collective effort. One thing I think which could be done more, but we already see it, is that we need to share risk. So that's also a collective effort. So we need more insurances, more guarantees. We see the European Union has, taken a big step allocating 13 billion euros to provide guarantees to help mobilize private investors and other investors into the emerging and developing markets. EIB has worked with this for a long time. We are also entering this business to try and do our small bit from where we are to continue that track. But sovereign governments, strong, rich, empowered people and governments and pension funds needs to see what they can to share more risk so that we can help develop and help achieve the goals of the climate agreement in Paris and also the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you. We seem to be running out of time. Only I'm extremely intrigued now about Greg, if you can share some numbers, because what Morten mentioned is very clear about shared risk. That's also what you are speaking about. I think that's one of the angles of why you are planning to consolidate. But can you share some numbers about how much is the Swiss pension funds investing, or you'd see going ahead invest in impact investment?
Well, difficult at this stage to give clear numbers. I think I'm so optimistic because I see impact investing. I think this industry, this trend is going to last for the next 50 years. If you look at just to give you an image of the set of opportunities, if you classify the sectors of the economy, you have the sectors in transition, the sectors phasing out, the all green and the fourth industrial revolution. In the long run, those two buckets will converge into two. So that shows you how much opportunities we are having ahead of us. One of the biggest constraints for pension funds is to have a proper diversified portfolio. And that's the reason why we have at this stage to team up with big players. And the government is a clear solution, in my opinion.
Thank you so very much, all of you. Nicolette, you take it over.
Thank
Thank you so much. I hope the discussions gave you perspective and hope for the future. We heard a lot, and I think the word engagement came the most. We heard barriers, but also solutions. We see that there are actors going faster, others going slower, but as Madam Badola mentioned, we go on the right direction. And I think for the moment it's already a good statement. Let's keep the pace. And we hope to see you next year with results going to 5% or 10%. The highest, the better. The largest the market, the largest for everyone. In fact, that's the point, I think. And there is also risks are shared in a different way. So we have all an interest to really extend this market. Thank you so much. Not hesitate to contact us, Swiss Impact Investing Association. You will see more information on our website. And thank you again for your time and participation. Thank you to all speakers.